Attribute filters are used to refine the selector. Note the syntax. The attribute filter is surrounded by square brackets and usually follows the basic selector. If no selectors are present, the all selector is assumed. The attribute can have a value. Note that the value is surrounded by quotes. Attribute values with spaces must follow the rules for CSS selectors. Anything other than a valid identifier must be in quotes. jQuery syntax will allow for multiple attribute filters. Let's look at the main types of attribute filters. An attribute filter with a simple attribute name will select all elements in the selector that have that attribute. For example, div attribute class will select all divs with any class. Without a value, this selector will select on the attribute itself. An attribute filter with an equal sign preceding a value will select all elements in the selector that have the specified attribute with the exact value. For example, div attribute class equals myFirstClass will select all divs with the class named myFirstClass. An attribute filter with an asterisk plus an equal sign preceding a value will select all elements in the selector that have the specified attribute that contains the value. For example, div attribute class asterisk equals my will select all divs with a class name containing the word my. An attribute filter with a $ plus an equal sign preceding a value will select all elements in the selector that have the specified attribute that ends the value. For example, div attribute class $ equals class preferred will select all divs with the class name ending in class preferred, including my class preferred. An attribute filter with a circumflex sign plus an equal sign preceding a value will select all elements in the selector that have the specified attribute that begins with the value. For example, div attribute class circumflex equals my will select all the divs with the class name beginning with my, including my class preferred. The last attribute example we will look at is the not attribute filter. An exclamation point sign plus an equal sign preceding a value will select all elements in the selector that do not have the specified attribute, or will select all elements in the selector that do not have an attribute with that value. There are other filters available. In jQuery, child and hierarchy filters have similarities, but they are also distinct. These are complex filters and are beyond the scope of a beginning tutorial. However, if you have experience in these concepts in JavaScript, go to the jQuery API for definitions and code examples. We'll be looking at content and visibility filters later in this course. Both are easier to understand in context. Now let's take a quick look at a few examples in the browser. Using Web Inspector, we can see that the base page does not have any jQuery code yet. There are two classes, class 5 and class 6, in the style tag, and in the HTML, all the divs have class 5. The first example uses div with the attribute title as a selector and calls the add class 6 and remove class 5 functions. Note that the first, second, and third divs have class 6. They are the only divs in the document with the title attribute. The rendered page shows the style changes. The next example illustrates the logical AND character of using multiple attribute filters. The all selector uses the attributes title and lang equals en and calls the add class 6 and remove class 5 functions. Note that while 3 elements have title attributes, the only element with both title and lang equals en attributes is div1. The rendered page shows the style change. The final example shows another example of the logical AND nature of multiple attributes. No element matches both attributes. The rendered page shows no style changes. In the next video, we will look at traversing the document.